Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Erik Wolf, and I serve as the Executive Director of the World Food Travel Association based in Portland, Oregon in the United States. And the World Food Travel Association is a nonprofit entity, and our sole purpose is to create economic opportunities where food and beverage meet travel and hospitality. And today we are going to be talking about Arizona. And Arizona is a state in the southwest of the United States. And so here I've got Google Maps pulled up, and just would like to show you, for those of you who don't know where Arizona is, I'm sure all of you recognize California and Mexico down here. We're going to be focusing on two specific parts of Arizona today. One is the town of Mesa, and Mesa is just east of the larger city of Phoenix. And then we're going to also be talking about Tucson, and Tucson is about an hour, hour and a half southeast of the Phoenix Mesa area. And the area is accessible either by the major highway here or through the back roads, which can be quite charming. Now, on the show today, we've got some nice guests, and I would like to introduce you to who they are. We've got Lauren Topor. She is a contributor with Thrillist.com. We've got Michelle Streeter, who is the VP of Communications and Partner Relations with Visit Mesa, and that's the tourism office for the Mesa area. And then we've got Megan Kimble, who is the editor of Edible Baja, Arizona, which is a fantastic magazine and website resource for foodies in the area. So I'd like to welcome Laura, Michelle, and Megan today. And I'd like to ask you just to introduce yourselves a little bit, say who you are, and maybe a little bit about what you do in your roles. Can we start with Lauren?
Absolutely. So thank you, Erik, for the introduction. My name is Lauren, and I am a freelance writer based here in Arizona. I've been doing a lot of food writing for a handful of years, and something that surprises me about being in this type of industry here in Arizona is that the food scene here is always surprising. There's always something new happening. There's a new restaurant popping up every month. And I'm always surprised when it comes to the history behind the Arizona food scene and these growers who are doing absolutely amazing things. It's really incredible. More to what I do, I work for Thrillist. It's a nationwide publication that's based out of New York. So we have freelance outposts in a handful of the American cities and some abroad too. I know we have a big presence in London. But what we do at Thrillist is we capture what's going on specifically in that region, whether it's food, whether it's beverage, and lifestyle, culture. It kind of comes full circle.
Fantastic. Super. Thanks, Lauren. Michelle.
And I represent Mesa, Arizona, which a lot of people don't realize. We are huge. We're almost 500,000 people here in Mesa, and we jut up against regional communities that have incredible farms that are focused on education and the whole dining experience. So what we've done at Visit Mesa is we've kind of connected all of this food tourism that was happening around us, and we've kind of crafted it into just a destination in and of itself, really just focused on food and all types of food and seasonal food. And this is where the chefs forage. So that's kind of my role here at Mesa, is to promote travelers are changing. They're looking for new experiences, and you do not want to give a visitor a bad food experience because everybody will hear about it. So that's here at Mesa, is to make sure that everyone is just, traveling through their stomachs and getting a great story.
True. And for anyone watching, just to give people an idea of where Mesa is, it's a city that is connected to Phoenix. And do you consider yourselves part of the Phoenix metro area?
Absolutely. We're definitely part of Greater Phoenix. Mesa does have its own airport as well, with about 45 cities that we service nonstop. So after Phoenix, we are the second largest in the metro area. So we've got about 65 hotels and a lot of Mesa as the spring training home of the World Series winning Cubs. So Mesa is on the map, especially with those out of the Midwest. So that's us. We've been in visitor business since 1986, hosting visitors here at the Bureau.
And Megan, tell us a little bit about what you do in Tucson.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much for convening this. So I'm the editor of Edible Baja, Arizona, which is a local food magazine based here in Tucson. We're part of Edible Communities, so there are 90 edible publications all across the U.S. and Canada. And Edible Baja, Arizona is actually the largest of all the edible publications. We publish 200 pages of content every other month and print 26,000 copies of the magazine and distribute it for free all over Southern Arizona. So we call ourselves Edible Baja, Arizona because we're very aware that our food shed here in Tucson extends south into Mexico. And so we're very much a cross-border publication. We publish stories in Spanish. We cover food and agriculture in northern Sonora as well as Tucson and southern Arizona. So the magazine's been around 3.5 years. In December of 2015, so last December, about a year ago, Tucson was designated a UNESCO World City of Gastronomy, which was really exciting for this community. And Edible Baja Arizona was the media partner for that designation. So we helped apply and also sort of have been involved in defining what that designation will mean for our food community since then.
Excellent. Well, I had the pleasure of visiting Tucson and doing some site inspections down there last May, and then I was in Mesa and did a little bit of a restaurant crawl in October, and I was really impressed with both communities. I know Arizona a little bit. My parents used to live in the Scottsdale area, so I got down there a lot, but I'd never really spent a lot of time in either Tucson or Mesa. And I was just really blown away by the variety, the creativity, and the fact that Arizona has even got wine, and a lot of people don't expect that. Lauren, could you maybe introduce us a little bit to the idea of how Arizona can have agriculture with the extreme climate that you have, and what the kind of things are that one could expect to find grown in Arizona?
Oh, absolutely. And I think the question that a lot of outsiders, tourists, people who are not familiar with Arizona have is, why Arizona? What's going on in Arizona? Isn't it all cowboy culture and desert and cactus? But there's really a lot going on here. I will say, I didn't grow up here. I grew up in the Northwest, but I heard that in elementary school, that all the children are taught Arizona's 5 C's. So the 5 C's are copper, cattle, citrus, and climate, and cotton is the 5th. So if you look at that, you have cattle and citrus as 2 of the main drivers of what kind of made Arizona come to be. So you can find citrus here. We grow a plethora of citrus from oranges to lemons. It's incredible. And then the cattle industry, ranching is still very much alive here. So yes, we do kind of have those long-standing traditions that are still very important, but we are evolving, and we have urban farms, and we have farm-to-table restaurants, and we have chefs doing amazing, innovative things with food that are new and really surprising to locals and outsiders alike.
Excellent. I think what a lot of people probably don't realize is that as you drive from Mesa to Tucson, you're actually going up in altitude. And even the wine country on the other side of Tucson, that's an even higher altitude. And I don't think people expect higher altitudes in the desert of Arizona.
That's very true. You mentioned the wine region. I had the pleasure of experiencing Sonoita. It is the wine region that is south of Tucson. It was the first in Arizona to be designated an AVA, so an Arizona Vineyard Alliance growing region, and it was one of the first in the country to be designated as well. And one of the winemakers that I talked to, she grows her grapes at an elevation of, I think it's about 5,000 feet, maybe a little bit more. So you really are going up in elevation, and it's an incredible wine region.
That's about 1,500 meters for those in other countries.
Right.
That's pretty high. Megan, that area, that's your backyard. That is Baja, Arizona. Can you tell us a little bit about the food shed there and why it's so special?
Yeah, I mean, I think that something that a lot of people don't know that certainly surprised me is that we have a really long tradition of agriculture here in Southern Arizona. So one reason that Tucson was designated a UNESCO World City of Gastronomy is that in the 2000s, archaeologists dug right here in downtown Tucson, and found evidence of agriculture going back 4,100 years. So that means that in Tucson, people have lived here continuously, and it's been continuously farmed for more than 4,000 years. So it's the oldest place in the US to date that anyone has found evidence of agriculture. So we have this really long tradition. And what that means is that there are crops that have been grown here for a very long time. So some of those are corn, squash, watermelon that are really well adapted to this desert climate, which means typically, it's really arid. We get really cold days and really hot, cold nights and hot days. So there are specific crops that thrive really well here. But it is also a place of incredible cultural convergence. So, we have Native Americans like the Tohono who have been farming here for thousands of years. And then the Hispanics arrived in the 1600s and brought crops like white Sonora wheat, which came with Father Kino in the mid 1600s, which is a desert adapted white wheat. And then you have sort of Anglo contributions. There's a huge Chinese population here. So you have all these different cultures that have converged and brought their own crops to this region. So I find that the array of foods that are grown here and prepared here is kind of astounding. And there's also a sort of a long tradition of wild harvest. So, even today, people will go out and harvest prickly pear in the summer. There's cholla bud, mesquite. And it's just a sort of part of the cultural conversation here that these native foods are still consumed and still kind of, you go to a coffee shop around town and you can find tortillas made with mesquite. It's just sort of part of the vernacular.
Now, Michelle, you don't have a culinary heritage as old as quite that old to you, 4,100 years.
About 4 generations back. So I think our oldest farm is actually Sossaman Farms. They've been doing a lot of the wheat growing in Arizona for over 100 years.
Okay. Now, you do have some amazing peaches nearby, I understand, with Queen Creek.
We do. So we represent not just Mesa. Mesa has a collection of farms as well, mostly citrus that we promote in Mesa. We've got a great dairy farm that is doing a lot of cheeses and ice creams and things like that. But what we do have is we have a relationship with the town of Queen Creek, which is actually just to the south and east of us. And that community has Schneff Farms, which does 300 acres of organic peach growing, and all the chefs in the metro area love their peaches and look forward to them every May, which is, you would think Georgia and peaches, but our farmer will certainly hold a candle to any Georgia peach any day. In addition, in February, that's when we all get out and start to see, the signs of spring. So we do appreciate the weather that we have here, but we have peach blossoms. Those are very vibrant. A lot of visitors take advantage of the beautiful scenery that we have as part of the harvest seasons, and they kind of change. We actually just are wrapping up some of the harvest over there at the Queen Creek Olive Mill. So they just did, I want to say, 22 tons of cold pressing on Sunday this past weekend. So they're getting all their olives harvested off the trees, and that too is in Queen Creek. So again, that's kind of where the farmers moved. As urban sprawl was inescapable, farmers moved further and further away from civilization. But now, believe it or not, a lot of those farms are, surrounded by communities, and people are living in these communities, and they appreciate, and they purposely moved out there because now you've got this farm to table aspect of part of their life, which is wonderful.
Yeah. I lived my teenage years in the state of Georgia, and you're very right. It's known for peaches, but honestly, I had peaches in Colorado that blew my mind, and the peaches here in Oregon and Southern Oregon are amazing. So if yours are anything like that, maybe there's something to peaches on the western side of the country. I don't know. Nice. Now, I've got some of your websites up here, and now Mesa, you've got this interesting fresh foodie trail that you've put together. Would you like to tell us a little bit about this? And I've also got a link here to Schnepp Farms, and that was a really interesting business model too. So would you just like to, help tell me what to navigate through on your site here and introduce people a little bit to what you have to offer?
Absolutely. So the farms have been here for a long time. I mean, I know Schnepp Farms is celebrating 80 years. So, the farms have been here, but what we found, we just did a brand audit about 3 years ago, and we did these focus groups, and we realized that our visitors are staying in Mesa because we've got the lion's share of all the hotel properties out here in the East Valley. But then they are going, beyond our borders and over to the town of Gilbert, the town of Queen Creek, and they're seeking out these experiences that were already in existence. So what we did from a visitor standpoint is collect all of these agritourism experiences and kind of map them out on a trail. So we created the Fresh Foodie Trail, the lifestyle that we launched as part of our rebrand, and it's been so popular. And it's just a really great way to spend a day, in the destination. You can start by picking oranges and having fresh orange juice in the morning. Then you can go over to the dairy farm. You can over to the olive mill. The olive mill is great. They really do have an incredible experience to provide there. They do tastings and they do tours. And again,
Oh, uh-oh.
I will report that back.
All right. Well, here are the photos. They're not too big, but here we go.
They should get larger. But it's just a great place to relax, and they've taken it upon themselves to really be a steward for the not just the agriculture community, but also like the foodie community. So they work with Arizona wine makers. They work with Arizona brewers. They are really focused on hyper local. So there's some incredible products. I actually use the mill as a place to shop. I don't live too far from there, so that's definitely where I will be going to not just pick up my olive oils when I run out, but they've got fresh bread from the local baker. They've got the farmer's cheese from the dairy farm. They've got gelato. Like, it's just a wonderful place to go and hang out. And then on the weekends, they do stay open later. They do wood-fired pizzas, but what you get there is an education. So all of their product is, the farmer, where it's coming from. They work with the local pork shop as well on some of their salamis and different things. So it's just a great experience. In addition, what is sort of new to the agritourism trail that we promote here in Mesa is Hayden Flour Mill. So Megan will know about them and what they've been doing with the Sonoran white wheat and introducing some of these ancient grains to consumers. So that's kind of their focus now. It's really just doing small batches of milling, but they are really taking, again, that stewardship role on preservation. So they've preserved an ancient Egyptian farro that is amazing, and a lot of chefs are using them. Purple barley, I've been a huge fan of their purple barley pancakes, and my kids now only eat purple pancakes, I'm pleased to say. So
They probably love that, don't they?
They love it. It's changed the game. I mean, you haven't had great bread until you've tried the product. And they got recognized by Martha Stewart as one of the American made products a couple years ago. They won a grant for that. In addition, they ship all across the country. So you will see their premium flours in Italy, in Chicago and New York. And
yeah,
I know a lot of the top restaurants will, that they also supply them. In Portland, Ava Jean's is my favorite. And
yes.
Is Hayden Flour Mills. So
Nice. I had their pasta at a restaurant in Tucson, and it was lovely. It was really nice. It just tasted like pasta should taste, and it's almost like you can't go back to regular pasta after having really good quality pasta like that.
It's not easy, I will say that. Yeah, your palate does get used to this premium product, but
Yeah.
as it should, because it's definitely wonderful, and it's above the bar. So again, along with these experiences, when you stop by, there's takeaways, there's education. So at Hayden Flour Mills, they'll do pasta making classes or pizza making classes. Over at Schneff Farms, they have the farm stand. They have an incredible U-Pick program that they are launching with Steadfast Farms, which is Erik Schultz. A lot of people in the community know him. So, again, it's not just, if you want to just go out and have a meal, you can absolutely have that meal. You can have 6, 7. There's a lot of stops on the foodie trail, but if you want to take away an experience, there's that opportunity too.
Excellent. Lauren, have you done this fresh foodie trail?
Yes, actually, I had the opportunity to go on a tour on the Fresh Foodie Trail this spring, and I think it was the perfect timing to go. We made a stop at True Garden Urban Farm, which is an aeroponic gardening farm, and it's right in the city. It's incredible. I was really impressed because it seemed like they were changing the game in how food is grown. They don't use any dirt. Everything is grown vertically. It's fresh, it's clean, everything is 100% organic. That was one of the stops that really blew me away. Michelle might be able to speak a little bit more about what they are doing there and maybe a little bit of background, but that was definitely one of my favorite stops along the Fresh Foodie Trail.
Nice. And have you been to this olive mill as well?
I did. That was the first time that I did an olive oil tasting. I have to admit, I didn't know that that existed and that was a thing. I've done wine tastings and I've done beer flights, but never had I done an olive oil tasting, and it was incredible. I went home with a few bottles. I love the Meyer lemon olive oil. It is a staple. It's my go-to standby. I use it on almost anything. And their olive oil cupcakes are fabulous too.
Nice. That sounds pretty tasty. Well, let's go down the road a bit, down back to Baja, Arizona. And Megan, I've got your website up here. And let's talk a little bit about some of the resources that are grown in your area. You were talking about the 4,100-year-old agriculture tradition, which I serve on that UNESCO review panel, and I saw Tucson's application, and I was blown away by the resources there, things like the seed library and stuff that people maybe don't expect. But why don't you walk us through a little bit about your culinary culture in your area, and are there any similarities that you could make between Mesa, or is it completely a standalone food shed?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, no food shed is standalone, of course. So we certainly have connections, but I think because of our elevation difference, because of our proximity to the border, we're a sort of different culture down here. So some of the things, right, that were included in our application to UNESCO were this his long history of agriculture. And so visitors can go experience that at a place called Mission Garden. It's right at the base of A Mountain, which is one of the first places settled here. It's right in the floodplain of the Santa Cruz River, which, used to flow year round. And so that's where these archaeologists found that history. And this group called Friends of Tucson's Birthplace recreated a walled garden there, and they have actually a timeline garden, so you can see the different crops that were planted over 4 millennia of residents here. So that's an amazing place to go experience that culture. You can go to Pima County Public Libraries and check out seeds. Mm-hmm. There's an organization called Native Seed Search, which was founded in Tucson more than 30 years ago, and they have this amazing array of desert adapted seeds, some of which are found nowhere else in the world. The thing that you're clicking through right now on our website is our source guide. So one of, I think, our biggest strengths is the magazines, that we have almost 300 local businesses that advertise on our page. So that's how we do what we do, is thanks to our local advertisers. And so we sort of created a directory for people who are looking to go to a local restaurant or to a local winery or to find a store that sells some products that are made in Southern Arizona. And so it's mobile optimized. So the idea is that you go to it on your phone, and that you find ways to sort of plug in. So this is an example of how you might access that. We have, the reason some of them say VIP is that we also have a subscription program. And so our magazine is free, but people who want to support our mission and the continued life of the magazine can subscribe for $36 a year. And then we mail you a magazine directly, and you get great discounts at most of our advertisers.
Well, I see you've got dog friendly too, and that's important. We travel with our dogs, as a lot of people are now, right? And it's hard to find places where our little 4-legged friends are welcome.
I have a dog too, and she's welcome in our office. She often spends time here.
Nice. Tell us a little bit more about that seed library, because I think that's something that's pretty unique. And it's, I just remember that it was located in an actual library. And can you tell us a little bit more about the whole checkout process and how they keep the seeds stocked and how that works?
Yeah, so it's an amazing, really innovative program that is hosted through Pima County Public Library. So that, the library where you go check out your books is the same place where you can go check out seeds using your library card. So they have, it's like in these old card catalogs, you can pull them out and there are packets of seeds. And how it works is that you just have a library card and you can check out, a given number. So let's say you want to plant a tomato plant, then they give you X number of tomato seeds. And the idea is that you, quote unquote, return those seeds after you plant and harvest and save some seeds. And so they get, I don't remember the number, it's something like 40 or 50% of the seeds that are checked out are eventually returned, which is a huge number. Most seed libraries, it's, 20%. So we have huge participation in this program. And it's all, I think, 19 branches of the Pima County Public Library participate in this. So people who are in Patagonia, who are in sort of our more rural communities, can also access seeds. So it's a really great way to get people gardening who maybe can't afford to buy seeds or don't know how to start. Not only can they check out seeds, but the library has a lot of resources to get people planting, to give them, they have classes on how do you actually save seeds now that you've grown a tomato plant? How do you harvest your crops? So it's a really amazing sort of community-based resource.
Nice. I remember when we were at the seed library, the woman was explaining how it works, and she said that they ask people to bring back the seeds that they really like. If the plant turned out really well, if it was really flavorful, really productive, to bring those seeds back. But at the same time, if a seed didn't work out so well, they wanted that feedback too. And it's really kind of a process of natural selection. So rather than some scientists doing GMO mumbo jumbo on the seeds, that this is, over several seasons, you'll have the best possible crops.
And the best possible crops that are adapted to this specific place.
Exactly.
So precisely, very much like a place-based kind of adaptation. And that's what a lot of what we're all about at Edible Baja, Arizona, are promoting place-based foods. So foods that do really well in this particular climate, rather than growing commodity crops like cotton, for example, that aren't necessarily built to sort of thrive in our desert climate. So and there are lots of examples of that. One example is beef. I mean, this is cattle country, and there are, of course, lots of commodity ranches still in Arizona, but there is a growing population of ranchers that are raising cattle that are sort of adapted to the desert borderland. So Criollo cattle is one of those breeds. They thrive on jojoba and mesquite and prickly pear and all the things that you would expect to find in a wild desert landscape. These cattle can subsist on that, and in fact, produce really great meat. And there are ranchers who are raising these cattle and then selling them into the local marketplace. So those kind of projects are super exciting to me, and that's a lot of what we cover in Edible.
Yeah. I remember we went to a store. They had a lot of seeds there, but they had other local products. I can't tell you the name of it. Little tiny shopping center, but we brought back some seeds to Oregon, and we asked the guy. He said, we said, would these work in our climate? And he goes, well, yeah, these would work, these wouldn't work. And so we brought some seeds back, and they didn't work too well. I guess it wasn't hot enough here, even with global warming. But
too soggy up there.
What's that?
It's too soggy up there. We like our soils arid.
Yeah, I mean, we had a really dry summer. I mean, it gets quite hot here in the summer too, and maybe part planted a little late, but it didn't turn out so well. I mean, we do berries well here, and so we had something like 20 kilos of berries in our yard this year. Raspberries. They started fruiting in early May, and we just go out and eat them off the bush. It was just obscene almost. It was crazy. But speaking of global warming, and maybe, Lauren, do you want to tackle this one? I mean, Arizona is already hot, and now that things are getting hotter, what's the future of agriculture in Arizona?
Oh gosh, well, that's a big question. I think we're growing. Like I had mentioned, the True Garden Urban Farm, it's all indoors. Everything is grown inside in vertical planters. They're probably about 10 feet tall. They require no soil, so they're not outside. They're not exposed to the elements. I don't know much about it. I've heard that they are doing this in Canada as well. But if this was something to grow and expand, not just in Arizona, but across the region, across the country, and into other countries as well, it could really be a game changer. Economically, it's great. You could essentially grow your own crop, fruits and vegetables. I know they're growing strawberries, they're growing herbs. It's a really great alternative to growing outside in the garden or planting a big crop in the soil, and it just doesn't turn out because of the elements and the climate and the weather.
I've seen this this concept in other news articles I've been reading, and I want to say that I think I was in Chicago O'Hare, where they've got a garden right there at the airport, and I don't know if they're using this particular technology, but in terms of maximizing space and protection from the elements, this is a great idea.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't have to be this particular aeroponic food production system. I'm sure there are other ones out there. So if someone's in another country and they can't get this, they could look for something similar. Now, was this was actually created in Arizona then?
Well, the True, I'm just going to jump in here, Lauren. True Garden, it's actually, believe it or not, it's a compound pharmacist that started this particular urban farm. And I do believe that we will see them popping up everywhere across the country. You are correct. It's the same company behind the one at Chicago O'Hare. And yes, they are not the only one. I actually think that you can get a much micro version of this kind of idea. But you just got to watch the plastics and make sure that the material that it's made with is BPA free. But what we have in Mesa is it's this compound pharmacist. He was having a lot of his patients come in, and their blood work was just really troubling for him. And just that's what a compound pharmacist does. He tries to get you back to the basic biology for your system. And so what he chose to do is he learned about, this future growing, and he said, I've got to do this. Like, it was a calling. So he opened up a 5,000 square foot greenhouse. He had to get a lot of permitting, and it's an incredible greenhouse, state of the art. And now a lot of the chefs are sourcing from him. He does microgreens as well, and it's beyond organic because it doesn't have any soil that this product is grown with. And it's amazing. There's a picture of Troy right there, Troy Albright. So it's fresh. It changes. If you taste the product right off of the tower, there's nothing fresher. I mean, that basil there just looks dreamy, and you can see the root structure in the bottom of the photo. So,
yeah.
When you do buy their product, they're at farmers markets throughout the valley, Scottsdale, Gilbert, Mesa. When you buy the product, the roots are intact, so you can store these vegetables in your fridge. If you own a tower yourself, you can get 3 to 5 harvests off of one head of lettuce. And again, Arizona, we've got lots of sunshine, so greenhouses are great for productivity, that's for sure. How
are these replanted? So let's say that you harvest the lettuce or the basil off, and you pick it off. How do you get it to grow again? Do you have to put more seeds in, or?
You get more seeds, and they actually do a lot of seed production there too. So you can plant your own seeds, or you can get the seedlings directly from them, and they also do mail order. But so once the harvest is done, you would just replant. So.
Okay, so you just put the seeds right in the hole, and
there's a seed table right there as an example, and you can see the ones in the bottom of the picture are sprouts.
I see. Okay. So do you open it up and put a new seed table in? Is that how it works?
Basically, they're cut into little squares, and I think that's rock wall. So it's almost like a insulation, but it's made with rock that's spun fibers, and that is what holds the seed together. There, you can see that there. So if you just imagine them cutting those into little squares after they sprout.
Okay. So it's not, you don't just take a packet of seeds and put the seeds in the hole. You've got to do it like this. Okay. Fascinating. That is really interesting. I really had no idea. And was this company one of the pioneers in the world, or did they just make it better?
No, it is one of the pioneers. Actually, the engineer behind that particular tower garden was trained by NASA, and he worked with Epcot, with Disney. So he's got an incredible background.
This is amazing. I had no idea. Wow.
Exhibit that he used to manage, not Troy. Troy is our Mesa connection to True Garden, but the gentleman that created the Tower Garden, he did the land at Epcot Center. So if you go back, those that know the land, that an experience at Epcot, and he was the master agriculture farmer behind that project.
Okay. And they're pretty too.
They are pretty. And actually, believe it or not, what you can't see in these pictures is the sound. So there's water that runs through it on a filtration system, and it drips down. It just gets the roots with the water. So it starts at the top and goes to the bottom, and it's on a circulation system. And it's tranquil, actually. It's like having a little fountain in your backyard. And in Arizona, the great thing about us, you're seeing all the interior pictures, all these outside. So and everything I've seen, oh my gosh, zucchini, yellow squash. They tried pumpkins this last harvest, and they're green kale. So they're definitely experimental too. As Lauren said, she saw the strawberries that they were trying on these tower gardens as well.
Now, I don't know. I'm not seeing any bugs here. I mean, I'm sure there are bugs. Are they just too small to see? Because everything looks so clean.
Everything looks clean because it is. I mean, inside the greenhouse, they actually bring in, good bugs. They're these tiny little flies. I cannot remember the name of them, but you can see them. This is live, so I can't remember the name of the fly, but they bring in these little helpers, but they do have issues with aphids, not all the time, but you can see that, and then they clean them off with a organic solution.
Mm-hmm. We do that here as well. I think it's something like peppermint oil, light detergent, and something else that would take them off.
Yeah, and I don't know their formula, but I know that they abide by strict principles. Again, going back to Troy's background, being a compound pharmacist.
Yeah. Let's segue a little bit from agriculture, which I think that's fascinating, and I think a lot of people don't expect this in a state like Arizona. And you could take the same logic and apply it to other extremely hot places around the planet. Let's move into cuisine, because I think both in downtown Mesa as well as in Tucson, I had some really amazing food, and of course, the Mexican influence is extremely strong, but so is the Native American influence. And maybe, I don't know, Megan or Laura, maybe you're the best person to talk about this, but can you tell us a little bit about the culinary direction that is kind of brought us to today, and where you see Arizona's cuisine heading in the next 10 years?
Megan,
if I can just make a quick comment on the agriculture, and then on that we'll segue into the cuisine. I mean, I think that what is really exciting about being in a place like Arizona, which is also sort of challenging, is that we are kind of going to be one of the epicenters of climate change in the sense that this is arid lands agriculture, and so much more of the world is going to be arid lands. And so what we're trying to do here in terms of growing crops with less water, growing crops that are adapted to this kind of harsh extreme climate, is going to be exportable to so many other regions, and is going to be applicable. So, I mean, I guess for me, I think that the innovations happening in agriculture are similar to the innovations happening in our cuisine, which is to say making really delicious meals with the foods that thrive here. So, White Sonora Wheat is a really good example, like Pizzeria Bianco, Jeff Zimmerman at Hayden Flour Mills, Don Guerra is a baker in Tucson who uses wheats grown in Arizona, is to make foods that really taste distinct, that taste like different than foods that you can get somewhere else, because we're using crops that were grown here. So I think that the phrase place-based foods gets thrown around a lot, terroir. I mean, these are kind of concepts that are almost sort of meaningless because they're used so much in food, but I think what is super exciting to me are to see people who are kind of reconnecting the food chain. So you need a farmer like Steve Sossaman who's growing White Sonora wheat. You need a miller who knows how to mill it into food quality flour. And you need a baker or a pasta maker who knows what to do with that to make a really delicious plate of pasta in front of you. So it's not just a chef who's going to make the future of Arizona cuisine. It's the chef connecting with the butcher or the miller or the vegetable grower, all the people sort of behind the food shed that are connecting in new ways to create this cuisine.
Lauren, what would you add to that?
Yeah, I think that's happening right now. Since I've lived here, I've been here for about a decade now. I've seen a recent surge in the type of farm-to-table cuisine and the type of restaurants that are sourcing locally and using vegetables or the flour from Hayden Flour Mills in their dishes. It's all local, and it comes full circle. Like Megan was saying, you have to make those connections between chef and farmer to really get things rolling. But I think it's really surging, and I hope it continues. I really do.
Interesting. I'm looking here. I mean, the lemon olive oil cupcakes, you're talking about the olive oil cupcakes, and clearly that's local olive oil, and it's probably local lemons too.
That's true.
Yeah, right. And so that's something that we do a lot on our blog and in the magazines to empower people to, you get lemon olive oil. What do you do with it? Something that is also really fun that we're doing is you can see this Baja Brews post. If you go up right on the yellow one. Oh. So we've partnered with, I think, 14 local breweries to do special, who are, already brewing here locally in Southern Arizona, to do special brews using ingredients that are native to the Sonoran Desert. So we had one last week where they used late summer fruit to make these really delicious experimental beers. We did one before that with peppers from the desert. So some people made like chiltepin pepper beer. The one before that, we did prickly pear. And so the idea for us is to sort of foster those kind of connections with someone who is harvesting prickly pear and these brewers who can use those ingredients to create these like new innovative products that people have never experienced before.
Now, tell me a little bit. I remember there was mesquite whiskey that I tried down there. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, there's a distillery called Hamilton Distillers, and they are, to my knowledge, the first mesquite smoked whiskey in the U.S. And it was started because Stephen Paul was a furniture maker. He made mesquite wood furniture and had all this sort of, and also kind of concurrently loved Scotch. And he had all of this sort of extra mesquite wood scrap from his furniture business and kind of was like, well, hey, we could use this to smoke barley and make whiskey from this place. So I started doing that on a very small scale, experimenting, and realized that there was this huge demand for whiskey that tastes different, that tastes like Tucson. And so today he has this really amazing, he's grown, his facility has expanded, I think, 3 times. And so he started a malting operation in his distillery, which is really exciting because the bottleneck to get local grains into local alcoholic whiskey or beer is that it needs to be malted first. And there weren't any maltsters in Arizona. They're in the Pacific Northwest, which is, sort of traditionally where beer gets made. So Stephen Paul's malting local grain from a grower in Marana and turning that into mesquite smoke whiskey. So it's truly a sort of grain to glass kind of drink. And, as you probably experienced, it's really delicious.
It's amazing. I'm a whiskey drinker, and for other viewers today who are whiskey drinkers, it's not like the Scottish smoked whiskies, which are more from the western side of Scotland, the area of Jura and so on. This is a different kind of smokiness, and it's really interesting. So if you are a whiskey drinker, and especially if you liked smoked whiskeys or smoked the smoky flavor, I think it would be wonderful to try. And in fact, we had a cocktail. Is it Maynard's restaurant there in Tucson? Yeah, and it had one of those, and it was amazing. It was one of the best cocktails I've ever had, and that's in that old train station there. That was a fun experience.
Yeah. So it's called Whiskey Del Bach, and I think they distribute it now in a handful of other states outside of Arizona too.
Yeah, it's a craft artisanal production, so you're not going to get it. You're not going to be able to order it from around the world. You've got to go to Arizona to get it.
Yep.
And speaking of going to Arizona, before we wrap up, I just want to make sure that everybody knows about our Food Trucking World biennial convention taking place in Portland next April 1 to 4. There is a Consumer Food Travel Expo on Sunday, April the 2nd, and then the Trade Conference on Monday and Tuesday, April 3rd and 4th. So I hope that everyone can join us for that. Now, back to going to Arizona to experience some of these things firsthand, I think the important thing to show people is that they can experience both Tucson and Mesa together. They're close enough. You can either fly into Phoenix or Mesa, because Mesa has its own airport, and then hang out here for a little bit and then drive on down to Tucson, or vice versa. Tucson has got some great nonstop service as well. And what might be fun is to kind of go on the back roads here, because this is kind of a, I don't know, not the best highway. Michelle, how would you encourage someone to get from Mesa to Tucson? Would you encourage them to go on these back roads here? Which route should they take?
Absolutely. In fact, last year, Visit Tucson and Visit Mesa partnered together, and we brought some writers out. And that's exactly what we did, where we flew them into Phoenix, did our foodie experiences and dining here in our region, and then we did take the back roads. So we went through Queen Creek, did the stops there, went over to Florence. We've got a wonderful Windmill Winery is there. We met with a guy that's doing incredible growing, Harold Christ. He does a lot of the microgreens as well, and he supplies to a lot of folks. And then we went down through Oro Valley. So is how we came through.
Is that this valley here?
Yeah, down the 79, and you'll see where Mount Lemon is, and just a little bit south of that, you'll see.
Oh, right there.
Yeah, so that's kind of how we took our group, and it was wonderful. They did some incredible things in Tucson as well. They went to a tamale factory, which was fun. We have some incredible stories that people did on Storify for the experience, which was nice. So we skipped the I-10 altogether, and then we flew them out of Tucson.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily have to head back to the valley if you want to kind of do a half circle, come into Phoenix, head out of Tucson, or vice versa.
Yeah, I think if there's a way to do it without getting on the I-10 highway, definitely. I mean, I-10 is certainly the fastest way to go, but nothing to really see on the way. And we forgot to talk about the wine. And Lauren, can you just wrap things up for us? Like, tell people where the wine country is and how close it is to Tucson, and maybe something, a little nugget about Arizona wine, because I don't think people really expect that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like our agricultural history here, we have a big presence of wine history as well. One of the winemakers I was talking to in Sonoita, it's about, let's see if I can see it on the map there.
Right here.
Yes, it's about an hour southeast of Tucson. Fairly easy to get to. The drive-in is beautiful. But one of the winemakers I was talking to there had told me that the wines, or the grapes that they were growing, the vines that they were growing here in this wine region, predate some of the vines that are found in the Napa Valley, in California, throughout other notable growing regions. And that to me was really surprising, because kind of like the food scene, when you're talking Arizona, you have that big question mark saying, why Arizona? What makes it special? And this is one of the things that I didn't know as a food writer, that I don't think a lot of people have that knowledge of. And it's a really incredible experience. All of the wineries are fairly close, so you could definitely make it a day trip. I know that they have tours. Megan might be able to speak a little bit more to this as far as connecting with a tour guide, because I know that they run tours from winery to winery, but it's fairly easy to get around, and it's a great way to do a tasting. And a lot of the wines, you would think that they would be similar in style and similar in taste because they're so close, but they're not. They're all different. They're all unique, and it's because they grow at different elevations and in different types of soils. And the winemakers down there, they're all kind of growing their own varieties, and it's working, and it's great. And I hope more people can get down there and really experience our #1 wine region here in Arizona.
Yeah, I've had some Arizona wines, and they are really, really good for people who are looking for those bragging rights to talk about, hey, I just had an Arizona wine. Dos Cabezas, I remember, was one that I really liked. There's many right now.
Yeah, and Dos Cabezas too, they're actually, in a sense, coming to the valley. They just debuted Garage East, which is in kind of the Mesa Gilbert area in a farming community, an agri-hood called Agritopia. And they'll have their experimental winery there. They have some partners in the valley. So they'll be using fruits that are actually grown in the Mesa area to produce kind of their fermented spirits.
And didn't the Erath family invest in a winery in Arizona?
Yeah.
Oregon Erath, the Pinot Noir winery.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone know about that?
They did. We have covered that, and the name of the winery that they invested in is escaping me. But I will say, I mean, I think that something that I didn't know is one of the founders of the sort of Arizona wine movement in the 70s, Gordon Dett, was a UA soil scientist at the University of Arizona. And he took soil samples from the area around Sonoyta and went to Europe and to France and compared the soils in these sort of very historic, prestigious wine growing regions and found them to be very similar. So we have, the sort of classic wine growing climate, which is cold nights, warm days, arid soils, and grapes do really well. And like Lauren said, I think a lot of the winemakers are experimenting with varieties of grapes that are not just your sort of classic Cabernet or Pinot Noir. They're trying to plant different varieties and blend them in interesting ways that make for a really sort of unique experience.
Sure. And if anyone does come in this area, you might want to bring your passport just in case you want to scoot over to the Mexican side and see what's going on over there. So. All right. Well, hey, Michelle, Megan, and Lauren, thank you so much. This was really interesting. It's brought back some great memories for me. I hope it's inspired some of our viewers to get some ideas of different things to see and do, especially if they're foodies. Arizona is already a popular tourist destination. The outdoor recreation is fantastic. The weather is fantastic. A lot of people go for golfing and so on. But there's a really vibrant food culture there. And so I would just encourage people when they do go to Arizona, open your eyes and try some of that local ingredients, local recipes, local places, local beverages, because the food culture is quite robust there. So thank you all for your time today.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. And next month, we're covering Italy. So we'll publish the date for the next Food Travel Talk TV soon and hope to see you then. Thank you all so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.